All right. Hello and welcome to Hack and Hustle, where we explore the ups, downs, and lessons learned in the world of cybersecurity, sales, and marketing with a deep dive on a new topic each week. I'm Anthony Johnson.
And I'm Brad Rager. And this week we'll be talking about strategies to help grow your career and network by giving of yourself, your time, and getting out into the world. I'm excited that joining us today is Dennis Dayman. Dennis is CISO of Cloud DLP and Insider Threat Protection Platform Code 42. Prior to Code 42, Dennis was the resident CISO at Proofpoint, Chief Privacy Officer at Maripost, and Chief Privacy and Security Officer at ReturnPath. Dennis is an advisor to several startups and is deeply engaged in national security and privacy policy, including as chair of the policy subcommittee at the Department of Homeland Security. Dennis, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks, Brad. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely.
Can I interrupt though? I got to just interrupt right away before we get into the pre-canned stuff, because there was some news this week about Code 42. Like, I don't think we can just let that slide, right? Like that has to. We got to at least acknowledge that.
No, we had a very exciting week at Code 42. And yes, we were acquired actually by Mimecast. And as you guys know, Mimecast is the leading global human risk management platform that's out there. And they have decided to bring into their fold, our aspect of, what you guys could call in DLP, which we call insider risk management, and to help their customers understand more about, data loss that either happens accidentally or on purpose. Things that are really keeping a lot of CISOs up at night these days, like, source code leaving the environment and ending up, outside of the company. So we're extremely excited about being a part of the Mimecast family, and it's going to be a great time here.
Awesome. I'm a huge fan. I know Mark Van Zadelhoff really, really well as a personal friend. So I saw that and I was like, I can't let Dennis slide on that. So we I know we have some questions and topics, and we're talking about your career and networking. So let's do that. But I just had to nod there.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, Dennis, so your resume has a lot of positions and former roles and jobs that you've had, but you also do things like your engagement with DHS, and as we were talking about your career and your lessons, and just the way that you've navigated your career, talk a little bit about what it's been like getting out there, giving back. What does it mean to you? What does it look like?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because, I started in this realm probably 30 years ago, and, I turned 50 next month. So it's, I'm definitely been around for a bit. But in the early days of a lot of the volunteering, if you will, that a lot of us were doing in the mid 90s with Usenet and some of the, first bit of technologies and communications, it really kind of bothered us that we didn't really have a way to sort of deal with, the early stages of misuse of the internet. We talk about the idea of tragedy of the commons, right? Where a resource is put aside for everyone's, use, but to do it in sort of a shared responsible way. And this is usually under the idea of farmers, right? Farmers would move their animals around from paddock to paddock. And what you would do is once you moved them from one paddock to another, then this other paddock that had been used would have time to regrow and regenerate. But then there'd always be somebody that would come over and overuse a resource, killing it over time. And that same mentality here within the internet began very early in the stages of it, where we were using the internet for communications and data sharing, and universities and governments being able to work with each other. But then somebody came along and would sort of start to misuse it. And this started with sort of spamming, services and things like that. And so it really kind of upset you as a user of the internet. But you really had to sort of come together as a group of people from around the world to say, how can we prevent this, and how do we keep the internet resilient and usable, for users. And without knowing it back then, that was sort of the idea that we were just kind of rolling into. It's we're helping each other, right? We're helping out with standards and ideas. And, as you've seen over the years as security professionals listening to this, we know that there's a lot of new standards and technologies, and we'll just use email as an example, where we've done SPF and DKIM and DMARC and all those things. But those just weren't done in a vacuum by one individual, right? It was done by many individuals that were working together so that we can preserve the usefulness of the internet. And so over the years, you kind of, by accident, but in a good way, have continued to work with people and to give back where you can, because it really takes a village, right, to make things happen.
So let me take this a little bit. Um, I love this this topic, but it's theoretical for a lot of early practitioners, right? Like back in the day when all of us were, running around in our 20s, I would say, it's you're like, hey, this is a new thing. We're gonna do this, and everybody was way more accepting and understanding of like, hey, I coded this thing. I promise it's safe. It's gonna be better, right?
Yeah.
But 2024. If you're a early in your career person, what do you think giving back and engaging in the community, what does that look like, and how does that contrast to like I mean, you just gave a great example of your career, but like how does that contrast if I'm 22 years old, 24 years old? How do I give back in while simultaneously grow my career?
It's actually a little bit easier now, I think, than it was for a lot of us. And you and I were just talking about Twitter X, right? That's where you do a lot of your speaking and whatnot. And because of these sort of devices that we basically live on day in day out in our social media world, what I tell a lot of our folks, and I'll use some of the interns that we have at our company right now. It's I make sure that they know that they're allowed to sort of go out there and explore the questions, right, and the issues, and then to be able to speak up on it. And one of the more simpler ways is, well, LinkedIn, right? LinkedIn has been a great platform originally for sort of resume building and understanding what your experiences are. But Microsoft has taken it so much more further now within LinkedIn to say, hey, share more of your stories. And so they built the tools now around that so that you can, go through a lot of information, read about it, and be willing to comment on something, right? Or share something and say, hey, here are my thoughts about this. Like the CrowdStrike situation, that was a huge thing in the last couple of days, obviously impacting people. And I've seen more and more people have theories or have ideas of whether the company could do it better or how we do it better as a whole. But just simply jumping in and doing a lot of reading and be willing to say, okay, I've got a thought, but I'm just going to keep it up here. No, let us know what that is. Because I have seen people who have come up with some great thoughts and ideas that I haven't even considered in the last week. And I'm like, that's a great point. Right. And we do this all the time in our real world, right? When we're talking to people, how many times have you talked to somebody and they said something, you're like, good point, right?
Yeah.
It changes you as an individual and your direction. So I would tell the younger folks is, again, and most of you are probably on social media, but don't be afraid to get out there. It's okay to make opinions. It's okay to make thoughts. And sure, you're going to have somebody that's going to say, hey, you're nuts. That's fine. You don't necessarily have to go back and respond to them if you don't feel like it, but make yourself known, and hopefully other people will hear that. They will buy into, in a good way, what you're talking about, and that just gives you more credibility, I think, as an individual.
I do think that's one of the cool things about security, right? Relative to other industries, like we all share a set of common adversaries and we're all there to protect fundamentally at the end of the day, right? And even when you look in the ecosystem of security, yes, there's different vendors out there. It's of course competitive, but at the end of the day, we're all looking to help secure enterprises and clients and humans from bad things that are out there. And I think that provides a natural forum for people to work together, for people to collaborate, for people to set aside, hey, I'm with this company or this company and we're competitors. No, at the end of the day, our job is to help protect our people, our assets, our data. And I think that creates an environment and creates a set of opportunities for folks that I don't know if you get that in other industries, right? But maybe Dennis,
well, Brad, you make a very good point.
Oh, yeah, go for it.
Well, I was going to say, you also make another sort of good point. And Anthony, this kind of goes towards a little bit of like what other things that people can be working on. You just said that we're all working on the same goal, right? We're all fighting the same, all the bad folks that are out there. When you sort of also take a look at that, joining these, these groups, like to call them therapy groups, but, joining groups of people as well also help you, I think, find that commonality that you just mentioned, Brad. There are tons of organizations out there, coalitions, if you will, nonprofits as well, that do things. And in fact, if anybody's of interest of this one, I was just even talking to some of the mindcasters, as we're now calling them, where I have come and worked with some of these people, not in the company, but outside of the organization in coalitions like MOG, the Messaging Anti-Abuse Working Group, right? These are coalitions that anybody can usually join because, again, there's a commonality that's in these. Some of them are open. Ones like MOG or Chatham House Rules, because we do have an opportunity to even discuss some of the more sensitive topics or secret topics because we're fighting, against the criminals. But I would even tell, the individuals that are even younger now today, you jump into some of those groups, you'll find other, as Brad said, common people that are there working with you. And in fact, actually, we're celebrating our 20th year actually at MOG right now, and they literally just posted my 20-year, blog post about why I joined it. And I kind of discussed a little bit about sort of like, about this idea that this is a great place to be in because again, you're around a lot of wonderful, very like-minded people, and that yes, it helps your career, and I'm sure we'll get into that here in a second, but it helps you also learn as well from others that are the graybeards, right? They're graybeards, but the graybeards that have been around a lot longer than I have that are there, and they're also willing to put onto you some of their thoughts and ideas.
So let me raise a contentious question because that's one of my favorite things to do a little bit here. So we have from the outside, it's very, very easy. So if you're not in security, it's easy to be like, hey, they're all fighting the good fight together, right? But from the inside, what you actually see are vendors and you see cyber practitioners, and it's almost like a caste system in some cases, right? Because I've seen, really smart security architects who happen to work at a vendor that try to join a group, and it's almost like they're ostracized a little bit, right? Because they're like, oh, but you're at a vendor. What I like to say is like sometimes, yes, they're a fisherman, right? But sometimes they just want to, they do conservation. They want to swim in the water. They just want to add value. So if you're not an enterprise practitioner and you do work at a vendor, right? How, and you're not a CISO, because I mean, like you yourself, you can walk into a bunch of organizations like, okay, cool, you get it. Although I have seen CISOs not allowed in a certain group, they work at a vendor now, right?
Oh yeah.
So how does a sales or an engineer who works on this other side of the really important ecosystem, how do they engage, give value, and further their career? Like how do you think they can actually do this?
I think it really kind of comes down to choice for them. I mean, I kind of go back to, how many different organizations that are out there and looking at what their thesis would be in terms of like, their charter, even better than that is, like what is their charter and what are they actually tackling? Not to go back to MOG again, but that's just a really good example for us. But we had the similar sort of problem, where when I found the organization back in 2004, I was at the carrier side of things, right? And it was really a carrier focused group about sharing, security information between us to say, hey, I just took out the spammer on our network. Be aware they may be coming your way. And well, what we quickly realized that in the larger picture, that it's just not the carriers, the receivers that are involved, but there's senders and there's vendors, as you're talking about. There's all these other aspects of the internet that we need to allow in. And so, what we attempt to do, and I've seen this as well in other organizations, I'll use like the IPP, which is the International Association of Privacy Professionals, was very heavily CPO focused, right? But now, in October, we have more of our, geeky technical, security, version of it. And what you see with some of these organizations is that they are looking at branching out and saying, hey, like we want to invite as many people, whether you're the engineer, we have a specific project group or SIG for that. Or if you are, the salesperson, yeah, we invite you into it. But in some of these organizations, what we do is we say, hey, listen, you can come as a salesperson, but please try not to pitch, right? Try not to sell too much. I'm sure you're going to meet with clients and that's fine, but you're here to learn about what's going on so that'll make you a better person, right? And so I would tell, these folks is just don't join everything, but go out and take a look at what these organizations are. Even talk to some of the individuals like myself and say, hey, would I fit in this organization? And you'd be very surprised to find that in most coalitions, again, they've broken it up into multiple sections, multiple sectors. And, for MOG, like we have a mobile section, right? Well, that mobile section has vendors in it. It has the carriers in it. It has all kinds of people in it. But the one goal is to solve the problem that the SMS or the voice providers that are out there have been dealing with. That's the end goal of it. And as well, to be honest, one of the things that we do at MOG is that, hey, every year as a member, you're reviewed, right, to see if you're giving back to the community. If you're just showing up to hang out and do things, we're probably not going to renew you because we haven't seen any sort of work out of you. And that's important, I think, for just the coalitions to consider doing to keep it, nice and workable. But as an individual, when you're looking at them, look for those sorts of things and say, yes, I do want to get involved. I do want to do the work. And just by joining here, I won't be ostracized because there is a place for me or a home for me here.
I love that idea, because I do feel like the problem with so many volunteer organizations is that 90 something percent of people just kind of show up and don't necessarily lean in and give back. And what does it take to lean in well, to contribute, and how should people think about how that can benefit their careers, or maybe the advantages that can be derived from that type of contribution?
Yeah, so I will jokingly warn everybody: be careful when you lean in, because once you start doing things, and this is sort of what happened with me on the DHS stuff, right? It's like when you talk about things or ask questions or complain, you usually get voluntold. So it becomes a lot of work. But, if you're like me as an individual, growing up as an ADHD child, like I can't sit still, as Brad knows. I'm always working and doing something. But, just know that, if you want to put the work into it, outside of your normal BAU or business as usual that you're doing every day for your normal job, you're going to have to put some time into the organization. Sometimes it's 5 minutes, sometimes it's an hour, it could be more. It all sort of depends on what you're taking on or volunteering in. But again, if your heart is in the right place, if your mind is able to balance and juggle a lot of different things, it can be done, right? I mean, sometimes I've got to work just to help them out on a Saturday morning. I'm sitting here drinking my coffee while my wife is still in bed at 7 in the morning, and I'm putting some extra time. But that's me as an individual. I don't mind giving that. Others have a harder time balancing that, and we sometimes have to go back to them and say, "Hey, listen, we've been working on this thing for a while. Do you need help to begin with?" Right? Can we bring in another vice chair or another individual to help with this project? And hopefully they say yes. But over time, it's like we then have to kind of go in and force ourselves into that process and say, hey, we've got to fix this. Now, in terms of what it does for your career, I think it does a lot of things, right? It gives you a lot more knowledge. I sort of mentioned the graybeards. I learned a lot. I was self-taught, but I learned a lot from even the older crowd over the years, and understanding, like the old IETF processes, right? The standards around that sort of stuff, the RFCs, and how they had an impact on the internet, technologies. So you begin to really, truly learn a lot of stuff yourself. But then, as you sort of mentioned earlier, like you are also able to impart back onto the group your experiences as well. And what ends up happening in the end of it for some of these coalitions, when you're doing things like best common practices papers and you're writing them, right, and putting them out, your name sometimes ends up on them, right? And you can feel very proud that you had some sort of, effect on them. The same thing with some of the standards, like the SPF standard for email. I took part with many, many other people in putting that standard together, and I'm proud to have my name within that IETF, assistance process there as well. Those really help because when someone's looking at you from a career standpoint, they want to know that you're just not sitting here working on whatever's going on right here within that company, but that you know what's going on the outside and that you can see some of the threats, you can see some of the things that are coming. Well, and then at the same time, you're going in as a mindcaster and saying, hey, I'm here to help. How can I do that? That looks good on the company and it looks good on you as well.
So Dennis, before we wrap, I do have one particular question that I also want to just touch on real quickly here.
Sure.
I grew up doing network security, being very, very technical, right? There's lots of domains of cyber. And one is, how does somebody who is they're not a geek, how do they participate in some of this stuff, right? Because it's going to be super intimidating, right? Is it just be in the room and learn and kind of get there? Is it, hey, get over yourself, don't be scared about tech? Is it, there's other things? And then maybe just as an add-on, networking actually terrifies people. A lot of when they're like, okay, what is networking? How do I do it? So, how does a non-technical person get plugged into some of the stuff? And then what would you say to somebody to be like, hey, this is how to think about networking, or how have you leveraged active networking to your benefit? in career.
Right. It's interesting because I think most security people sometimes are the introverts, right? We're always in the dark corner. Security is always pushed away because we want to be pushed away. We want to do our little thing. I would probably, to kind of answer this a little backwards, is in most of these groups, right, you're going to find very similar individuals, like you, very like-minded individuals. Our group has, we have the extroverts, we have the introverts and whatnot that are there. But again, if you find the right sort of respectful group, right, or coalition that you want to work in, you'd be very surprised at how welcoming that they are. I mean, like one of the things that we do for all new attendees at MOG when we all get together is we actually say, hey, Mondays are training days, but we also have a session where it's new attendees. All of our chairs, like Dennis is going to be there, and I'm going to get up and say, hey, I'm the vice chair for public policy on the U.S. side of things. These are the projects that we're working on. Not necessarily a technical situation, right? But it could be of an interest to you to kind of, come in and talk about privacy impacts or the SEC rules or any new state, regulations that are coming out. Not a very technical aspect to it. But then, yes, the technical side, they might have some of those sorts of things happening. But again, it's also a balance for those folks. Yeah, we're talking about wireless FAN. I may not understand Signal 7 switches and all that sort of craziness, right? But at least I have some sort of an idea to say, you know what? It's really getting hard to do 7726 now to report spam on my phone, right? Which is one of the things that ended up happening. And yet somebody just kind of got frustrated with it. They weren't technical, but then they came up with another way. And you see this today within your iPhone, where now in a text message, you hit report spam now, and it automatically goes up to your carrier and goes to whoever that they're using, right? So you don't have to be technical at all in most of these organizations. You can still have an effect on the organization by just having some thoughts and some ideas, and then let the others sort of help put together the technical aspects to it, and you're there to support that piece, and vice versa. They also are not the non-technical experts. They need people who kind of think outside the box, who have a policy sort of mindset, and that's fine. But again, yeah, I would tell you that join an organization like that of any sort, you will find a lot of like-minded people, and take your time. We're not asking you to rush in. It's okay to take your time to make some new friends, to kind of feel it out, and we'll still be there waiting for you to welcome you in.
Awesome.
That's awesome. All right, guys, let's do the roundup. Anthony, what's your top takeaway from this discussion?
That people just need to get in the room. Like, just find a room, get in a room, and contribute however they can, whether it's technical, non-technical, and I'd probably add on there, maybe just listen at first, so you can get educated, and you're going to add value or more value over time. But just get in the room, everyone.
Yeah.
All right, Dennis, how about you?
I think Anthony just kind of hit my top point here on this whole thing. Is just get in the room. It's okay. Reach out to people. I mean, if you want to reach out to me after listening to this podcast, go ahead and do that. Let me know that you heard me on this podcast, and let me know that you want to talk. I'm open to having conversations. And again, you'll find that most of us in the arena that are who are old and have been here a while are not to be feared by any means. So yeah, get in the room, shake a hand, have a drink with somebody, just be a human being.
Yeah. And I think that relates to my takeaway too, which is really around community. You don't have to know everything coming in. You don't have to bring sub-unique expertise. If you bring a little bit of hustle and hard work, people are going to want to spend time with you. You will build genuine human relationships. And in sales, that's about being able to build relationships and build trust. So why not get in there and add value and contribute? That's a great way to meet people, and everybody wants to feel community. So I think that's a great way to do that. All right, Dennis, appreciate you joining the show. Thanks for your time today. As always, Hack and Hustle is brought to you by Crux, the talent marketplace for cybersecurity.
And Delve Risk, the intelligence platform for security, sales, and marketing. If you have questions, hit us up.
And you can always drop us a line at pod@crux.so. Dennis, thank you.
Thanks, Dennis.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.